everyone, and welcome to Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, and along with my co-host, Chris Kaye, we discuss and dissect our favorite music, heavy metal. So sit back, relax, pop open a cold one, and let the debate begin. Welcome back to Debating Metal. I'm your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, with my co-host, Chris Kaye. Each week, we discuss and dissect the hard rock and heavy metal bands we all know and love.
Each week, we'll also discuss some bands and albums you may not know that you should definitely be listening to, as well as giving you our big four on various bands, albums, musicians, etc.
This week on episode 11, we're going to be introducing an ongoing topic called Album Cover Breakdown, where we pick a group and discuss and dissect their album cover history. This week, we'll be breaking down Metallica's album cover history.
Later in the episode, you wanted the best, you got the best, with this week's Big Four. And we've got another What Should You Be Listening To?
But before we begin, let's recap what we discussed last week on episode 10. Last week, we took you guys back to school with Metal 101 and discussed the three biggest heavy metal hard rock albums, Metallica's Black Album, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, and AC/DC's Back in Black. We also went over some of metal subgenres and some recommendations of what to pick up if you're looking to get into them. If you missed last week's episode or any of the previous ones, be sure to stream or download all of our episodes from your favorite podcast platforms. And don't forget to rate us or leave us a review. Chris, what's our Big Four last week?
Last week, we picked our Big Four comeback albums. To check out our list, find us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and let us know if you liked our picks or think you can do better. Let's start things off with What Should You Be Listening To? Kenneth, how about you start us off?
All right. This week's What Should You Be Listening To? I've come up with Kiss, Creatures of the Night. That album is probably, I would say, their most underrated album.
It's probably my favorite of theirs.
It's probably my number two or three. I really like Revenge. I really like Love Gun. Obviously, my favorite overall is Alive 2, but that's not a studio record. Creatures of the Night came out in 1982. It saw the end of the Ace Frehley era and introduced the Vinnie Vincent era, although not right away.
He plays on a lot of songs on the album. However, he's not credited, and he doesn't appear on the album cover.
Nope, not at all. But the standout tracks for that album are Creatures of the Night, I Love It Loud, and War Machine, with those last two songs being Gene Simmons songs. Creatures is just an amazing way to start off a record. The sound on that is bombastic. The guitar playing, I mean, it's the first time there was actually shredding on a Kiss record. So no one knew, Ace Frehley showing up in all the presses, but no one knows who's the other guitar player. Or who was actually playing guitar on the record, and it's a stark contrast.
Not him,
it's clearly not Vinny, but it's a great record.
You mean not Ace?
Excuse me, clearly not Ace. Clearly not Ace, but yeah, I mean it is a return to form, for lack of a better term, coming off of the disappointing music from the Elder album that barely had any indication of what Eric Carr could do as a drummer. This one showed off Eric in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, he was actually a little disappointed that was his first record with Kiss.
Yeah, the Elder.
Yeah, he got a complete turnaround on what he was allowed to do on Creatures of the Night. Just the way it starts. The drums are so heavy; they're right in the front of your face. I mean, they're just there.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
It's so much so that Vinnie Vincent actually said he didn't really like the mix because he felt like the drums were too far forward. But I really disagree. I mean, that's coming from a guitar player. Of course, he wants his work put up front, but I disagree. I think the drums being where they were, it was such a cool sound for the album. It's just it's not covering anything up. It's just heavier.
Oh, no, exactly. I mean, I don't feel the mix. I mean, yes, it's drum heavy, but I don't feel that the mix took away from anything else. I mean,
no, I think it was what made the sound of that album so good.
For sure. So yeah, if you haven't gotten it, if you haven't heard it, download it, stream it, buy it somehow. Kiss, Creatures of the Night from 1982. You won't be disappointed. Chris, what do you got?
All right. So I've got a band that's about the same size. Little band like
Four
Kiss.
guys?
Yeah. It's actually less. It's 3 guys.
Oh, wow.
I don't know exactly. Maybe they're hiring the guys that recorded the album, or I'm not sure. But basically, it's a small band from Houston called Day of Reckoning. They've released a new EP called Spread Your Disease. It is a fantastic record.
How appropriate.
Yeah, it's a very timely name for it. But from all indications, from everything that they've been releasing for a long time in their social media, this name has been around for a long time, and it's just really unfortunate timing or fortunate timing, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
So basically, it started as 2 members of Outworld, which put out one album a while back. Then disbanded. That would be Rusty Cooley. He's a pretty famous guitar player among guitar players. And then Matt Smith, who was the drummer for Outworld. Now, since he's gone in a different direction, but Rusty's playing with a couple other guys. Brad Lambert is the singer, and Matt Huff is the rhythm guitarist / harmony guitarist, because they do a lot of guitar harmonies, which sound just killer. So it's a bit of a mix between death metal, prog rock, metalcore, and thrash, but it heavily leans on these melodies that are put there, which is just kind of a thing of its own, from what I've heard.
Right.
Highlight of the album to me is a song called "Dig." Listen to it; the guitar harmonies are just killer. And a little bit of an interesting note, Matt Huff, the guitarist, a few years back I went to see the band at a live show, and they had a new guitarist up on the stage, which I had been told he was playing with them, but I didn't know the name. So I went, and it turned out to be a guy I used to sit next to in middle school, Matt Huff.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was very bizarre to see, but his guitar playing skills are just phenomenal.
Well, you told me about the album the other day, and I listened to that song "Dig." You told me to listen to, and it was quite amazing. Just
so intricate.
We don't get to listen to music very loud at work, and just to off the one little speaker that I could hear in low in the background. I mean, the guitar playing was just coming right through, and it was amazing to listen to.
Mm-hmm. For a self-produced album,
yeah.
It sounds killer. It's just one of those things, like, it's very complex but listenable.
Right, yeah.
One other interesting note is that Carl Sanders of Nile actually appears on the very last song on the album. He's got a lot of input there. You can hear it, but it's definitely their music, but it has, that collaboration feel to it. It's
right.
Awesome.
Right, cool.
So yeah, definitely check them out. I know they're playing around Houston, and you can get the album on Bandcamp or Google Play or any of those streaming services. It is available. Support your local bands. It's only, I think, $6 for the EP. So
come on, people, buy the CD.
Hell yeah!
All right, cool. Well, that brings us to this week's topic, and again, let's go over what it is. It's a new topic we're doing: album cover breakdown. This week we're breaking down Metallica's album cover history, and we understand that podcasting is not a visual platform unless there's a YouTube channel. But we're going to do everything we can to describe these albums. So if you have an opportunity while you're listening to us at home, pick up the album if you happen to have it, own it. If not, download it on your computer, take a look at it, and just listen along with us, so we can describe the album covers and our takes on the good and bad of the album covers. So we're going to start off with Metallica's first album, Kill 'Em All. It was released in 1983. It was on Megaforce Records. It was first or second album to be released on Megaforce Records, a small label by Johnny Z out of New Jersey. The album cover is what, Chris?
I mean, the first thing that I see when I look at the album cover is just this. It's basic colors: black, white, red, and that's it. It's such a stark contrast. It's very eye-catching. The logo for Metallica is such an iconic logo.
And it's very bold. I mean, it's big.
Yeah,
it's bigger than they normally put it on it. But it's also very one-dimensional. It's flat.
Yes, it's flat, but that M and the A, I mean, it's really just an eye-catching logo. So you got this image of a hammer with a pool of blood underneath it, and this ghostly hand kind of behind the hammer. Which, when I was a kid, I didn't think too much about it until I really just started looking at the album cover. I remember just sitting there like, is that supposed to be like a ghost hand behind it? Or is it the shadow coming down? But the shadow's not going over the hammer. It's very confusing. I mean, it's a cool image.
It is. It's a cool image. Which you realize when you really kind of break it down is it's on a light box, and so So you have light coming from underneath, and so the bottom of the handle, the backside of the handle is lit up. So that's what makes the hand really weird in its positioning and its shadowing. But other than that,
I've just always wondered what it was supposed to mean. Like, why is the hand like that?
It's basically letting go of the hammer, that killed whatever it killed. Now, when I first got this album, I was curious about it because I always thought that pool of blood was shaped like a child or a baby or something, and I always wondered what that was. And it's not necessarily meant to be that. I don't think there ever was that, but to me...
You're reading into it like a Rorschach test.
I'm sorry. But, it's like a baby sucking a thumb. I don't know.
See my mother.
Again, for an independent record, there is a little bit of shock value compared to what they originally wanted to call it, which was metal up your ass with a toilet and a knife shooting through it. And everyone who's a Metallica fan knows that iconic image. It's on a lot of T-shirts. This is still a very shocking cover when you see it because it is a pool of blood.
Yeah, it's eye-catching. I mean, that's what the point is.
Right, exactly.
Pay attention to us. I mean, I love packaging. I mean, that's always been kind of one of my things. I was a graphic designer for a long time. The package is what sells the product.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Of course.
It's what says, I want this one over this one. So I remember going into a record store as a kid. So a lot of times I couldn't listen to the albums. You didn't have the iPods and stuff back then.
Right.
And my friend and I would just go to this record store, and it's unfortunately no longer around anymore. We would go check out Diamond Head Records, and we would just go pick like the coolest looking album cover, and that was how we picked out music. And something like this that's just so interesting to look at. It gives you questions. And I think maybe that's what makes a good album cover sometimes is it does make you ask questions.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it invokes different sorts of thoughts and imagery and ideas. It makes you think, and those are very good album covers that can do that.
Yeah.
If it's plain and simple, there's not a lot of thought behind it, or it doesn't want to make you think a lot about it.
Yeah, and you've got this really nice bright red Metallica logo, and at the bottom you have Kill 'Em All in this big bold font. I mean, and clearly the message is there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you go to the back of the album cover, and you've got this picture of these late teenage boys, angry, angsty, wearing denim and leather, not very kempt.
No.
And what's kind of interesting about that is...
Well, I mean, Metallica, they're young. Obviously, you can see that in the thing. You can see all the warts and all, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I mean, their complexion's not great. It shows up on the pictures. You've got Lars Ulrich with a 5 o'clock shadow mustache that's really bad in terms. It
doesn't quite connect into a full beard.
No, he's still young. The angst that's all over their face. It's definitely a stark contrast from what was coming out of the LA scene at the time, where everything was prim and proper. Hair, the hair part of it was not yet, full blown, hairspray and teasing your hair. It was getting there, but in 1983, Motley Crue was the big act that came to come out of the LA scene. Slowly but surely, was followed up with Quiet Riot and Wasp and all those guys.
Yeah, but their hair's not a whole lot different than what you would have seen with Led Zeppelin.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's very just straightforward, parted down the middle and combed straight down.
So what's interesting about this is because there's not that focus of glam and glitz and looking good. Mm-hmm. I mean that's the whole attitude of thrash metal.
Oh, right, exactly.
I mean you look at these guys and they look kind of pissed off.
Well,
the album sounds kind of pissed off.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it fits the vibe.
For sure. I mean, they moved away from LA to get away from that and just to be themselves. And basically that was it. They would go on stage with whatever they were wearing, and maybe they added a studded belt or two. But for the most part, what they played in, was what they wore. They just were a metal band that went out there and played and kicked your ass.
Yeah. So you've got the image in the center, and then you've got it surrounded by a bunch of red text with the producers, the record company info. You got the album, the song tracks, but not much else. I mean, if you pull the record out of the sleeve, it's just in a white sleeve. There's no
there was no liner
lyrics,
notes. There was no lyrics, no liner notes. But when they got signed to Elektra in 1984, the album was reissued, I believe, in 85, and then was given, I guess you could say, the proper touches that it needed. The inner liner notes came with some pictures from the most recent tour that they had played that year, 1983. That was probably the Raven Kill 'Em All for One tour.
Yeah.
That they went on across America with Raven. It did come with the lyric sheet, and they did add the big single that they had that was on the back of Creeping Death, Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg, were added to this package. So there is a little bit of difference to it, but it makes it a little bit better. I mean, it's a collectible. The first one obviously is a collectible because it was the first Megaforce record and the first Metallica record, and this one is collectible because it has Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg on it. There are slight differences. The picture on the Megaforce release does not have an outline on it. And the one that's on the Electro release has a white outline on it.
Yeah, it looks a little more finished. Looks a little more professional.
Although the picture looks horrible in comparison to the one on the Megaforce.
It's very saturated.
It's very saturated. Colors are really, really almost obnoxious to some degree. I mean, the picture that's on the Megaforce version is a lot better. It's the real picture.
Yeah.
This one you could tell has been overprocessed and oversaturated. It's what's inside that counts, and this album led to so much more for Metallica. I mean, this was only the start and the beginning, and quite a career, as we all know. Next up, we've got Ride the Lightning. That was Metallica's second release on Megaforce Records. Came out in 1984. Chris, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
All right, so for the most part, you're looking at a blue image. One thing that's interesting about Metallica albums is they all have a lot of very stark contrast on the images. And so you've got a blue sky, a dark blue, so it's obviously storming out. It's got the electric chair in the center. Hovering above it is the Metallica logo, looking like it's metal.
Electrified.
It's electrified metal. and it's got lightning coming from the logo, hitting the electric chair. At the bottom, you've got the Ride the Lightning text. Kind of small and inconspicuous because the focus is on this image that's in the center.
Oh, yeah. The image tells you the story, and there is no hiding about what this is about. I mean, Ride the Lightning. It's an electric chair waiting the next recipient of electricity to basically have the person, and I don't want to say criminal because it could be an innocent person, but the next victim, I guess you could say, to ride the lightning. It is definitely a very pointed image. It's, again, iconic for the fact that, the electricity coming off the logo and what it stands for. I mean, it made a statement, a very bold statement.
Yeah, it's very eye-catching.
And it's a big jump from what the first album was to this album.
Yeah, it's a little more fleshed out in design work. It's painted, whereas the original image looked like a photo.
Right.
And this is a painted image. The Metallica logo has changed a little bit. It's actually coming towards you a bit in perspective, whereas the original was flat.
Yes.
So we go to the back cover, and we've got a kind of a carryover from the image that's on the front, where we've got blue sky with some lightning cracking, smaller version of the Metallica logo in the center, but some kind of cheesy placement of some pictures of the band, which are great images.
It's definitely a cut and paste feel to it, which I'm surprised that they didn't add the borders to the pictures like they had done to Kill 'Em All.
To Kill 'Em All, yeah.
But, what we're holding now is the Electro Release compared to the Megaforce release. And I don't think there's much difference other than adding the Electro logo and the UPC in the corner. Everything else is pretty much the same. But just that the song titles being put in the middle just looks like they cut and pasted a blue rectangle.
Yeah, that's definitely my least favorite part of this cover. It looks so cheesy. But what I do really like is these images that they've put of the band. There's some fantastic photos of Cliff and Lars kind of looking like he needs to take a dump, and James and Kirk. They're well contrasted. You've got complementary colors of orange against the blue, and it looks just really cool. It's very it pops at you.
Oh yeah, the picture of Cliff is kind of weird because it actually looks like the Reload cover in the corner of the of the background.
What's also nice is that it's a bit of an upgrade from the first release, in that the sleeve on the inside now has pictures of the band. It has basically a new class photo of the band, a picture from one of the concerts they played at backstage. So it gives you a smattering of all these aspects of you basically following them on tour, and then it's also got all the lyrics on the inside.
Right, yeah, and an extensive list of thank yous at the end. It's pretty much what Metallica, the several, after they reissued Kill 'Em All, By the Lightning, and Master of Puppets, what we're going to talk about right now, they all have a very similar inside liner note with lyrics and the information. So speaking of Master of Puppets came out in 1986, and it was Metallica's breakthrough record. This was their, this became their biggest record to this point. And what do you think of the cover, Chris?
All right, so it's set in a cemetery not unlike the National Cemetery in Washington. So a line of crosses, clearly from soldiers that have been killed. From there, you've got strings that are leading to these hands that are in the sky. Those are surrounding the Metallica logo, which is made of stone, much like the crosses below. On the center cross, you've got a set of dog tags, and then on the far cross on the left side of the page, it's got a helmet, a soldier's helmet. Mm-hmm. So you've got a very dramatic and powerful image here. So one of the things that always stuck out to me was you've got the placement of the crosses, mm-hmm. which, yeah, there's more than 3 lines of crosses, but they've got these 3 crosses in the front, which definitely resonates with Christian.
Oh yeah, definitely
imagery.
Some Christian imagery.
Yeah, so you've got a whole lot of different levels here. You've got the soldiers that are being made puppets. You've clearly got a reference to Christianity, possibly in that same context. I mean, there's just a whole lot going on here that it gets you thinking.
Oh, it definitely invokes a lot of thought. A variety of different themes can be interpreted from this, but it's definitely a theme of manipulation, mm-hmm. a theme of military for sure, and so you gotta,
which are all themes in the songs as well.
Exactly right. So
it ties in.
The album cover ties into several different themes in the album on the songs, and so that's pretty cool because it doesn't just lend itself to the one song. Like for instance, Ride the Lightning specifically lends itself to the song Ride the Lightning, mm-hmm. but this one it can be about several different songs that are on the album.
Oh yeah,
not just one. I mean, because Master of Puppets is not a military type song. It's not about soldiers
Disposable
and war.
Heroes.
But Disposable Heroes is definitively a war song.
And one thing that I noted on the last album cover was that it used complementary colors, which this one does as well, mm-hmm. where it's got the maroon red color on the top and the green on the bottom. It's very strong contrast between the very stark white in the center.
Yes, and the imagery also, even the center of it where it's very orangish yellow, almost feels like, there's the sun peeking through clouds, but it is also an apocalyptic feel to it. Mm-hmm. Like the end of the world is on that side of the color at the end of the crosses.
Yeah, the crosses are leading to a horizon point. It kind of, death is leading this direction almost.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so we flip to the back, and we've got a basically maroon cover with a photo of the band again, same kind of thing that's been on the last two.
Right. But you could tell that the photography's been upgraded.
Photography's better. Their wardrobe is a little better.
If jeans and t-shirts, they're better jeans and better t-shirts.
Better jeans and better t-shirts. And then you've got some really nice action shots of the band in motion while playing a show, as well as there's a huge venue shot from behind the band where you can see the crowd, which just shows how far they've come in just such a short time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're talking 3 years. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that shot is taken from the Day of the Green in San Francisco, which, was basically in their backyard. And although they're not the headliners, there's still a lot of people to see them in the middle of the daytime at a concert like that.
Oh, yeah. And any time that a smaller band, if they're not the headliner, gets the chance to play in front of this many people, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I like the pictures. I like, you could tell that they're outlined, so there's more to it. And the other thing I've noticed with Metallica in the last several records is the colors that are part of the album, like the maroon red, it becomes a theme for the entire tour, the entire concert, the tour, the T-shirts, for that matter. So I like how they incorporate all that into it.
And one image that's included in here that is in color on the CD version of this is the classic image of the band sitting on a couch with Cliff shooting the rod at the camera. But yeah, it's a really nice album cover. But as far as the whole package, it feels much the same as the last one.
Right, exactly. Very similar style. And that has a lot to do, it's strange how that ties in. The two albums themselves have a very similar feel. Mm-hmm. You got fast openers, title track, fast song at the end. There's a lot of very similar aspects to each of the albums.
Yeah, they had a formula going.
Yeah, the formula for sure.
All right, so that takes us to And Justice for All.
And Justice for All. The very cold stone feel to that cover.
No, this is a gray album. I mean, it's that's really the only major color here. The exception being the Metallica logo at the top is a little bit of a green color, and there's some money that has a little bit of that tie in there. But so you got an image of Lady Justice tied down, bound, blind, with the scales of justice that are just full of money.
Yes, full of money. One is higher than the other, but the scales are tipping in which direction. It may be that they're even, but but the money it's just breaking. The whole image.
There's an inequality there.
Right, there's definitely an inequality. The image shows a broken Lady Justice. She is ready to fall apart. It's definitely a social statement about injustice. Whether it's financial or
just
some
societal
sort of,
in general.
Yeah, some sort of corruption going on. So and the theme that it has lends itself into the album. Obviously, the way that it's very cold and it's just a stone front, it's almost kind of how the record was made. There's it's not a very warm record, with the lack of bass on it. There's a lack of depth, even though there's huge bass drum sounds on it. The overall feel of it is a very cold, calculated record, almost unemotional, even with the extra emotion that's in it.
It's weird saying a lack of depth because, yes, there is definitely a lack of depth there, but it is still complex. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just the bass not being there is what you're referring to.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Back of the album cover, again, more stone, the same green, highlighting the song titles. It's not very obvious there. It just kind of makes it pop a little bit. And then you got the band members all kind of looking a bit
solemn,
I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
especially Lars.
Yeah, Lars' face definitely looks like he's sad. And that may have something to do with they're still grieving for Cliff at this point. I do think that James' look on it is kind of almost Mona Lisa-ish, where there's a smirk, but yet not really a smirk. You can interpret it your own way. What I do like about the way that they wrote the songs on there, in keeping with the style, because it is stone, because it is Lady Justice, there's the Roman, almost like the chiseled Roman numeral lettering on the back is a good touch to that.
Right, so in the inside, you've got it's a double. It's not technically a double LP, but you've got two LPs.
Right, because of the length of the album, they decided to make it a 2-record set, not a double album, but a 2-record set, just so that the songs would sound better. Because if they would have squished all that music into one disc, it would have sounded terrible.
Yeah, unfortunately, they were smart about how they did that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because forcing your fans to pay more for just because you got a little bit more extra content, sometimes this doesn't work out. So what's cool is you've got a puss head image of a gavel with the band's faces in it, which is a pretty iconic image.
Oh yeah.
And then you've got on the second one, or maybe it's the first one, and then you've got on the other, you've got an image of the band looking like cool cats with their sunglasses and all black, sitting somewhere.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell. It's a dark image.
It's a studio picture, but there's definitely a theme to it.
Yeah,
with the way that they portray themselves on it. The cover definitely lends itself to what is happening on the album.
Yeah, the album feels cold, but not necessarily in a bad way.
No, of course not. I mean, the album is incredible. That leads us to their breakthrough album. Now, I call Master of Puppets their breakthrough album. Justice was kind of a breakthrough album because it just kept getting bigger and bigger.
I wouldn't call it a breakthrough. I'd call it the crossover appeal album.
Which one? Justice?
No,
the one we're going to talk about?
Yeah, the Black Album.
Yes.
I mean, it's what appeals to the masses, whereas Puppets broke them through.
Right, Puppets broke
to
them
popularity.
Through. Right, and the one we're talking about now is the Black Album. It's the self-titled release from Metallica. It came out in 1991, and this is the album that changed everything. It is a black, none more black. There's none more black. Logo is barely noticeable.
You can hardly even see it there.
And it's got the Don't Tread on Me snake on the bottom, which comes through in a different sheen.
Yeah, it's put on a different layer of print. Yeah, I never got this album cover.
Again,
to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those where I would have thought something like this would have come off of, would have been what And Justice for All was, because they were coming off the death of Cliff. So it almost seems like they waited an album to mourn him on the cover. So it doesn't. There's not a lot of sense behind it because it doesn't really portray what the songs are on the inside. We talked about how Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. There's these really thought-provoking album covers. This one is very plain. Does not bring a lot of thought, but I guess it might be one of those where it says, let the music do the talking.
I think that's a big deal. I mean, I think that's kind of what they were going for. I mean, it's definitely a big change, and to really grasp what's going on with them musically, you kind of had to know what was going on at the time, and just in general, for them to depart so much from what was popular at the time, put them in a different league. And the album cover being black is such a bold statement.
It's a statement, and that's, and it's almost like we don't need to have anything to show how good we are.
There's no frills.
Yeah, it's very no frills.
And then the back of the album cover, I like a little better. It's the same snake that was in the corner, the Don't Tread on Me snake.
But it's full size. It takes up the whole back.
Yeah, it takes up the whole back. It's got the same effect on it where it's a different layer of print. So you've got a little bit of a contrasting image there. And then you just simply have on the sides in gray the track names, and then in the center, produced by Bob Rock and Hetfield and Ulrich. And this was, I believe, the first Bob Rock album, right?
Yes, it was the first Bob Rock album.
Okay. It's a bold statement, being all black.
Definitely.
Very Spinal Tap-ish.
Yeah, and again, it was also a 2-record set because it went over an hour's worth of time. So that was the Black Album from 1991. Up next is Load, that came out in 1996. That is, I would say, is a departure.
A huge departure. I mean,
or a left turn, or I don't know what you want to call that.
Yeah, you have the band changing their logo to a more modernized kind of interpretation of the original logo. It's still got the points on the bottom. That's about it.
It's horrible.
Yeah,
I don't like it at all.
I've never really known anybody that really liked this version of the logo.
I wasn't a fan when the logo came out. I mean, I liked the album for what it's worth. The whole image was just kind of like, what the hell is this? I mean, I didn't like the logo. I didn't like the Andres Serrano's picture that they chose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of the covers, but at the same time, what can I do about it?
Well, much like the earlier ones that I was talking about, where I said there's a lot of contrast and simplicity to it, even though it is photo and it's a little bit different style than what they've been doing, it does still have that same effect. I mean, you're looking at it as an art piece, and it is very stark when you look at it. It's eye-catching.
It brings you back to Kill 'Em All colors with the red and the black.
Yeah, it's the same kind of color scheme. And what's a little bit odd about this image is that it is basically exactly what the name of the
load
the name is. It's a mixture of semen and blood.
Yes,
and I believe that's what it's
called.
The
blood,
piece of art is called.
I think it's blood and semen. Yeah.
All right, so a little bit different than what we've been looking at.
Mm-hmm.
A new take on what they've been doing, but still kind of in line with their older images in that way with the contrast.
Yeah.
You get to the back of that album cover and you've got Miami Vice Metallica.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the cigar smoking, smoky room, and a fedora sitting on the table. The guy's all wearing sunglasses. Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, if it wasn't Metallica, it's a really, really cool image. But knowing that this is Metallica,
it's very 90s image too.
That too.
Which
comes knowing the band coming from the jeans and t-shirt era that they were. This was such a departure from what they were.
It was strange. It was strange to look at.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that James is not very fond of this photo shoot.
The photo shoot. I think that he's not fond of the whole era.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was also very shocking to everybody is that the fact that when you look at the back cover, nobody has long hair.
Yeah.
And that really bothered a lot of people. Not that hair has anything to do with your musicianship.
But it was part of the attitude of metal, and
right.
Especially guys that were the forefront of thrash.
Exactly.
To change their image so drastically was a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
It was. So the back cover also has almost harkens back to the old Metallica logo when they created this thing called the Ninja Star logo, and they have basically put together the M from Metallica into a square. I guess it creates a square in the center and it turns it into what looks like a ninja star. The way they have it is the way you read it with the Metallica M in straight up and down. It turns it into like almost the 4 points pointing into a square. I prefer myself the way it looks when the points point north, south, east, and west, and that's the way I have it tattooed on my arm. The image is an Anton. The back image, the back cover is an Anton Corbijn image, which is used throughout the album.
They've got a lot of photos on the interior because this is a gatefold.
It is a gatefold. And again, it's a 2 LP set, and now at this point, you're paying for the 2 LPs. Vinyl being on the way out, now you're paying a little bit more. I mean, the Black Album was still, at the time you can get it for $10 or $12 on vinyl, but now the cost of vinyl is increasing. This album costs more. I believe this was close to $20. So you're paying for
now it's even more.
Now it's even more. Back then that was expensive.
Yeah.
And this was almost an 80-minute album. So it definitely was a double album. On a CD it's still a single CD. And they had that thought in mind because they cut the Outlaw Torn down to fit it within the 79 minutes and 20-second limit that you have. It is a gatefold. There are lots of pictures on the inside of Metallica, all either studio type pictures or them in natural surroundings.
They're for the most part they're all planned, staged photos.
Yes,
they're dressed in very stylized
clothing.
I don't know what to call it, but
fashion.
That's the best way to put it. I think is that these are fashion photos.
Yeah, these are definitely fashion photos.
Which is just such a weird thing for a band that started off the way they did on the Kill 'Em All back cover to be.
Yeah. I mean, and this lends itself. This is Anton Corbijn, who is famous for doing the Achtung Baby album for U2. And this is, I mean, if you look at the colors of this, it's almost an extension of that album, Achtung Baby. I mean, there's a lot of similar colors on it.
Lars and Kirk were really into this theme. They really pushed for this change, and unfortunately, it happened.
James acquiesced.
Yeah, and what I really don't like about this album cover is that on the inside, they do have some kind of cool images. A lot of them where they're just in the studio playing and stuff, and I do like that aspect of it. And then they've got this really cool Rorschach, to bring that point up again.
Right.
They've got Rorschach images behind all the song lyrics, but they don't have the full lyrics. They only put these little smatterings.
That bugged me.
Yeah, that was one thing I always loved about picking up records, was that you got all the lyrics and you could follow along as they were, the song was playing.
Right.
This just gave you like a line or two.
Yeah, that was upsetting, because there's some songs you want to sing along to and you don't have the lyrics, and the way that those lyrics were short and just cut off in many cases, very reminiscent to what Pearl Jam did on their 10 album, their debut album, where they only gave you so many words from the songs, and it was kind of like, do you not want us to know your songs?
And this was the era really before the internet got big, and you just being able to Google things. I mean, you would probably have to ask Jeeves or some shit.
No, but, I mean, this is 96, so AOL, and Ask Jeeves is probably on the horizon at this point. But, and they got criticized heavily for it. Yeah,
it was not a good move, but still has its positives.
Yeah. 18 months later, or a little bit less than 18 months later, part 2, basically, Reload, comes out, and the album format,
it features the same theme format.
It's the same style, same theme, same artist, Andres Serrano, and this time it is a blood and urine picture that he created, and that's what they used on the front. A lot less shocking. Even though you know what it is, it's a lot less shocking. It almost looks like
it could be a number of things.
Yeah, it looks like a peach to me, to a degree. Like a peach, or like a blurred peach. But there's a lot to it.
Do you think if they released Reload, it would have been urine and semen?
I don't know, man.
And Reload would have been, urine, blood, and semen.
It would have been something. Logo's the same.
They just put a re in front of load with a little bit different font, and
it's definitely. I mean, the songs were created at the same time, so it's literally supposed to be like one big double album, double CD, but it would have been way too large of a package for people to get. I think they were trying to be conscious of that. Plus, they didn't finish the songs.
Yeah, they didn't finish everything, so to get it out sooner, they broke it up into 2 albums. Right. Now, what I do really like about this versus Load is, instead of using staged photos, the fashion photos, it's a lot of concert.
Yes, that's a lot cooler.
Images,
yeah, live photos, live action photos versus staged posed photos.
Yeah, and a lot of black and white and color, but the color is very. It's planned because they plan to take these photos, and they know what they're doing with the lighting to achieve some really, really cool imagery here. But yeah, it's a much more preferable set of images, because it's not as jarring to see your thrash heroes as playing music versus
as Scarface icons.
Yeah, and it follows the same interior theme in that it has the Rorschach test images. It's more of the same.
Yeah, it's basically part 2, and it's virtually thematically it's identical. So it goes from there. So there's not a lot to say about Reload other than it's a pretty good album. If that's your taste.
Yeah, if you take 3/4 of Load and 1/4 of Reload and put it together as one album and leave all the filler off, that'd have been a classic album.
Yeah, if you leave the filler off of those, when you combine everything, you definitely have a great album. So we're going to move on to now. We're going to skip over Garage Inc. because it's even though it's a studio
cover
record, it's a
album.
cover album.
Yeah.
And we're going to skip over S&M. All four of these albums, Load, Reload, Garage Inc., and S&M, all have Anton Corbin photography. They all have the same logo. Although at S&M they went back to the M again with that same theme, and they added the S with the
treble clef.
The treble clef. So it was really cool combination of stuff. And then the end of the 90s came and the bottom fell out for Metallica. Jason left the band in 2001. In 2002, James goes into rehab. We all know the story. It was documented on the movie Some Kind of Monster. And what emerged from those sessions was Saint Anger. And Saint Anger, as much as Metallica wanted to return to form, they didn't quite get there. I mean, musically, yes. Sonically, not so much. But the album cover is what we're talking about.
I would disagree on those points, but that's for another day.
That's another conversation. The album cover is, again, sort of a return. Pushead is back in Metallica's life, and he does his first album cover for Metallica. When I say first album cover, it's the first studio album. He had done singles, done t-shirts, but now this is his first album cover for Metallica. No name, no title.
Just a really strong pop art image.
Yes, a real strong pop art image. The fist, which has got a string of some sort tied around the wrist. It's got some strong, vibrant colors. The red, the orange. Comes out really bright, really strong. There's no shading whatsoever.
Yeah, there's no gradation. It's just the common themes of pop art. It's very stark in contrast, as we've said for pretty much every album so far.
Right. Now, what you do notice is that there's no band name on it, but if you had bought the CD, you got a sticker that had a new logo for Metallica, which was different than the original, different than the second one, but try to kind of go back to being a metal kind of logo.
Yeah, it had the same thematic feel where it had the points, but was, I would say, more of a modern, for the time, for 2003. Mm-hmm. It was a more modern version of that, and it did capture the feel of a metal band.
Right.
Whereas the previous one was more of a
alternative
logo.
When you flip the CD over, there was some more Pushead art. Now, it's part of, actually, the Pushead art, it's a continuation, but it's actually an expansion to understanding what the front cover was. You have a rotted mouth with teeth.
Kind of like a zombie woman.
Zombie woman. Could be a guy with long hair. But, you basically, typical Pushead
I never
skull.
thought it. I always looked at it as a woman, but yeah, it theoretically could be a guy because...
Yeah.
Yeah.
With long hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, typical Pushead skull, where very detailed teeth, very detailed skull, and the shading, even though I wouldn't consider it shading because it's a monotone type of shade, but there's...
The shading is done with the stippling style of art, where it's points.
Right, okay. Yeah. And as a CD, it was a Digipack CD.
The initial release was a
Digipack. And it folded open, and what you saw was the full picture, which it basically explains where the wrist and the hand come from. The fist and the wrist all tied together is actually like a necklace around the skull's neck. So there's a lot going on with this theme, which
it ties into the song with
Saint
Anger,
correct,
around my neck.
Yeah. So it is definitely a very strong statement. The font is, if I'm not mistaken, is also a Pushead created font. Little, I don't know if you call it scary. It's an edgy kind of horror kind of font.
Horror feel to it.
Yeah. So I like the image.
The imagery is great.
I love Pushead's drawing.
It's just when you put the CD in, the horror began.
Yeah, it's a tough listen. Some songs are good, some songs are not so much. But even the good songs are hard to listen to rough. Because the production's bad. Nonetheless, that is what it is. it was a return to Metallica being metal, but at the same time, it was just a rough production.
Yeah.
You know, it was before Robert Trujillo joined the band.
Even though he's featured in the album art, if you look in the interior cover, it had a photo of the four of them walking together, including Robert. It had a pullout which had some interesting art inside of it. There was a painting of what appeared later on the Some Kind of Monster EP.
Yes, the person that's kind of wrapped up.
Yeah, wrapped up, blinded.
Almost like a mummy.
Mm-hmm. So it had some more art inside of it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we don't have it right in front of us to look at, but it was a cool digipack that folded out like 3 or 4 ways. So you got a lot of art in the whole thing. It was great.
Yeah, because it came along with the bonus DVD of them playing live in the studio the entire album.
Yeah,
so that was pretty cool.
A package, and I actually enjoyed that better than the album.
It sounded better
because it sounded better. Yeah.
I actually ripped that and turned it into a CD, and it's really cool sounding.
Yeah,
to listen to. So we move on now. At this point in Metallica's career, I don't know why they decided to continue this trend, but it went from 1997 to 2003, which is 6 years to come out with an album. Now, 2003 to 2008. So you got another 5 years to come out with an album. But they come out with Death Magnetic. Now, this album, the cover...
Again, it was a digipack.
Yes, it was a digipack, and this one was really cool because it was layered. And you had different layers to get through the coffin dirt part of the front.
Yeah. And again, you had a very stark contrast in the imagery because you had this coffin shape in the front that was like a brown and black. It appeared more black on the CD version, but it's all metals that are being attracted via magnetism towards the center.
Right, that's what it looks like.
Like a Woolly Willy, if you remember that game where you move the guy's hair around to make him bald or give him a beard or something.
Yeah.
But it's a strong image because you first look at it and you obviously see the coffin shape, and then you see this all the metal being attracted to it. So it's almost a metaphor like, hey, we're metal again.
Yeah, and the big thing that you notice right away is that Metallica returned to using something very, very similar and almost exact to the original logo.
Yeah, it's a slight variation of the original logo.
There's a slight variation with the A and the E and the T. It's very minute, so to the point where it almost looks like the original logo. And that's you kind of felt at that point that Metallica had returned to something. Mm-hmm. What that was is all up for judgment because some people still don't think they've ever returned to their metal roots, but that's an opinion, for somebody else. The album itself was really good. It had its ups and downs as far as what's metal, what's not. It has Unforgiven 3.
I'm still waiting for Unforgiven.
Yeah, let's not wait for that. The album cover is pretty cool. I mean, I like it. It's got, it's talking about death and it's talking about magnets, and those are the two things that really show up on the cover. The actual packaging was really cool with the different layers.
It kind of sounded like you were gonna say there was a song about magnets. I was like, I don't remember that song.
No, but they don't have a title.
The North Pole and the South Pole.
They don't have a title track, but the last song on the album, which is My Apocalypse, has a reference to the phrase Death Magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had the CD, the back cover was relatively plain. It was just white with the album songs listed down the middle.
By far the blandest back side of an album cover.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it is...
Now, one thing that frustrated me about the initial release, because it had that cutout in the center, it cut out the stuff that was in the lyric book.
Yeah, it cut out the words.
Why didn't they move that over to the side?
That was the whole idea.
It kills it.
Oh, yeah.
You can't read it along with it.
Yeah, it was definitely upsetting.
I think it was a bad idea. I liked the album cover. I thought it was cool, but execution could have been a little better.
Yeah, it was definitely... It was one of those things where you're like, damn it, you could have just moved it over a little bit and it would have been there. We're going to get now to the 10th and final record in Metallica's Yeah,
because they're going to release another one.
Well, yeah, I mean, in their history at the moment, Hardwired to Self-Destruct came out in 2016.
8 years later.
8-year span. So that's the farthest that Metallica had been between albums, or the longest between albums. They took the logo that they had, and they had a little bit of
it looks like it's supposed to be digital distortion or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of a little whacked out. It's like some sort of,
like it got pixelated or something in a way. Like
it got hit with electricity and kind of shorted out. Is what it looks like.
I guess so. Yeah,
it's not bad. It's the whole theme of the tour, the whole theme of the record.
Yeah, it's the same logo. It's
the same logo, just distorted.
Shock to the system.
Exactly. But the image is I don't know. It leaves something to be desired to me. I understand the concept of how they created the image. I'm not a fan of the image. Now, there are 3 different images that are available to the consumer.
They also follow the same theme, though.
They all follow the same theme, but part of it is the shapes that they use. The vinyl has a different cover. The CD has a different cover, and then the deluxe edition of the CD has a different cover. And when I say cover, the image that's in the center, where basically all 4 members are blended together to make one sort of monster face. Each album has a different version of it. What we're looking at right now is currently the vinyl version of it. And I do have the CD version, the single CD version of it on my stereo system. I prefer the version on the deluxe CD over the regular CD version, or even the vinyl version. I like better than the single CD version.
Yeah, but as a whole, they basically feature the same type of image. You've got all 4 members of the band. They've taken images of them yelling, looking full of rage, etc., and they've all kind of been placed onto this one face. And so you have a blurry image that kind of illustrates this rage inside of the mind. It's got lots of colors, so you got purples, greens, reds, orange, I mean the full rainbow. But it's all set onto a white background. So it again has this stark contrast that's been a theme with all of their album covers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it gets the point across. It does the trick of showing this uncontrollable rage inside.
To understand how this effect was made, they basically posed for a picture, and instead of having a white light shine on them, they actually had a projector put a picture of another band member on them, and so their mouths are lit up a certain way, and it's really weird. The image of the other band member on them, or even themselves on them, one is meant to do something, and then the other, then they're kind of showing an image. I mean, it's hard to explain how they're doing it, but you know, they're posing a certain way with their mouth open, or some sort of shock value type of picture, and then the image that's literally projected onto them is different. It could be them, you know, like if Robert has got a picture of his mouth open, there's another picture of Robert, or it could be James that's projected onto him, or it could be Lars projected onto him, and so it just comes across, and it makes this crazy, really weird, disturbing image. That's what they photographed, and then that's what they put together on all 4 of them.
Yeah, they're in the center of the gatefold on the record. It's got a red projection of an image on their face, and what they've done is they took a photo of them and made them monochrome, so they're all just red, except for their eyes and their teeth. And so when it's projected directly onto them, they have the white teeth and the eyes visible from the projection, but their own eyes and teeth are red. So the one, most of them are kind of cool looking, like Kirk has kind of a cool, almost demonic look, whereas you look at James and it
doesn't even look like James.
It's funny because it's like a cross-eyed guy got projected onto him, and somehow his real eyes have become his nostrils. And
yeah.
and it's a little funny to look at.
The whole thing is disturbing, really.
Yeah,
In all honesty,
that's what they're going for.
It must be, but the whole package.
This is not a glamour shot.
No, it's really weird.
You got on the back. There's a almost animalistic image where you've got the mouths of the bands protruding from the side of the head. One of them sticking their tongue out. They've got teeth. It's just this monstrous image, and it definitely says something.
It definitely makes a statement.
It's eye-catching, which is the whole point of an album cover.
Which to me, this album cover does not go along with the title, and that's one of the.
It's almost more because hardwired to self-destruct sounds like a technological thing,
right?
Whereas
exactly.
this is very animalistic,
Mm-hmm.
so it's kind of an odd choice of image.
There's some animalistic themes in this in the songs, but the title itself, there's no reference between. There's no connection between the title and the image.
They should have had a song called Face Monster.
Maybe. So, that is Metallica's album cover history.
So what would you say of those? What's your favorite?
I'm going to say Master of Puppets.
I'm going to have to agree with you. It's just such a strong image.
Yeah, Ride Lightning's my favorite album, but it has nothing to do with the album cover.
No, I mean, this is specifically about the album covers.
Yeah, Master of Puppets is probably got the best. It's probably the best album cover in my opinion. Just there's so much that album cover invokes. It's a tremendous, thought-provoking cover. It's so iconic.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could describe it.
I mean, when I went to the store, this tells the story. When I went to the store to pick up the next Metallica album, because the first one I owned was Injustice for All, the next one that I wanted to buy was strictly based on the album cover. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hadn't listened to them, so I didn't know. So I had pretty much a selection of any of them, and the next one that just jumped out to me that said, I have to buy this album, was Master Puppets.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's definitely my favorite. My second favorite would probably be And Justice for All.
Okay.
Based on the collection that they have, that also tells a deep, thought-provoking story because of the corruption, of the coldness about it, and knowing the history of the band at the time where they lost Cliff. There's something there to that album cover, to me.
Yeah, I get it.
All right. We are up to the Big Four. Our Big Four this week is concept albums. The Big Four heavy metal concept albums. Chris, why don't you go ahead and let us know what your Big Four is?
All right. So starting it off with number 4, I've got Wasp, the Crimson Idol.
Wow, that's my number 4.
Interesting. Okay. So what that is a story of a man becoming a rock star with all the typical excess, but never really finding happiness with his family. And his family doesn't accept him, and he takes kind of a dark turn after his brother dies. Eventually, he ends up hanging himself with his own guitar strings, very poetically.
Yeah.
Guitar strings never really being the thing that brought him happiness, and chasing that dream and never really finding happiness with his family because of chasing that dream.
Yeah, the story of Jonathan Steele.
Yep. It's pretty heartbreaking and relatable. A lot of people go through that, where they don't necessarily grow up to be what their parents envision for them, and unfortunately their parents don't accept them for that, and that's really a tragedy.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, very similar story to the Dead Poets Society, the movie with Robin Williams. Same thing with parents not accepting what their child want to be.
So what I really like about it is, it's not your typical Wasp affair. It was supposed to be a solo album, but it's Blackie, and you kind of know what to expect instrumentation-wise.
It was Blackie all grown up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a much more mature album.
Very mature album, very good. Frankie Banali played drums on the album.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. It was my number 4 as well. So my standout songs on that album were Hold On to My Heart and Chainsaw Charlie, Murders in the New Morgue.
Yeah,
I like that song.
I like that song. It has a feel, definitely. It sounds like Murders in the Rue Morgue. I also liked I Am One. I like that song a lot.
That's also a very good song.
All right, so moving on to number 3, I've got King Diamond, Abigail.
That's my number 2.
I'm not as big of a King Diamond fan as I am Merciful Fate because he does things a little stylistically different. But what I really appreciated about this album, and I've listened to it a few times, is that it tells such a cool story.
It is a very cool story.
It's haunting.
Yes. The story of Miriam Natius, I believe it is, Jonathan LaFay, and of course Abigail.
Yeah, basically this couple moves into an old mansion, even though they're warned by 7 horsemen not to move into that Jonathan inherited from his family. So he, the one night, the ghost of his ancestor, Count LaFay, comes to him, shows him a stillborn fetus that's been mummified in a coffin, and says, "This is Abigail. She's possessed your wife, and you need to stop her from coming back around."
Right.
So time moves on a little bit, and it becomes very apparent that she's, one, possessed, and that she's going to give birth to Abigail.
Right.
So Jonathan kind of comes up with a plan. He knows he needs to stop her. He comes up with a plan to lure her down to where the original body was in the house, and she ends up pushing him down the stairs and killing him.
Yep.
So at that point, Abigail's reborn into the world, and there's a really kind of disturbing reference in there that she's basically eating her old body for sustenance to regrow.
Yeah,
and
weird story.
Yeah, the 7 horsemen find her, take her to this hidden, I guess it's a church in the woods, and then they seal her away with 7 spikes of silver.
Seven's a theme that weaves itself in and out. Mm-hmm. The 7th day of July, 1777.
Yeah, it's a really cool story, and it just shows that he has such an imagination.
Oh, he does, yeah.
And a way of crafting a story that's like, for me, when I first got into Merciful Fate, the problem that I always had was getting into the falsetto. But that's always been kind of a thing with a lot of people when they first listen to music. If it doesn't first hit them, give it a few more tries, and something might catch you. And for me, it was his lyricism that it was such a cool story that I just got involved. I've listened to the album several times now.
Cool. Very good. My standout tracks on that are The Family Ghost and The Arrival.
I really like Possession.
Do you?
Possession is such a cool song, and Abigail itself, which is the final conflict between her and Jonathan. I like both of those songs a lot, but Possession is just such a cool song.
Yeah,
it's
very cool.
It hits you. Why don't you tell us your number 3 since we've kind of taken all yours too?
No, it's okay. So your 4 was my 4. Your 3 was my 2. My number 3 was Fear Factor, Demanufacture. Is that on your list?
No, it's not.
Okay. That's a 1995 album from Fear Factory. It's influenced for a couple different things. George Orwell's 1984 novel and The Terminator.
1984 is a classic novel.
It is.
If you have not read it, it's definitely worth a read, especially in today's society.
Yeah, it's basically a story of, machines versus man. Basically, in its own weird kind of way, this is the only person or the only group that can make this album is Fear Factory, because they sound so mechanical. Mm-hmm. And the way the way that they recorded it and the way that they play the music, it just totally, it sounds like machinery. It sounds like manufacturing. It sounds like what it is. It's a very strange way to put it. That, like I said, they're the only ones who could have pulled this album off. There are other bands that kind of sound similar, but for whatever reason, Fear Factory is perfect. They created this amazing album with the sound behind it that just kind of made it all blend into this perfect symmetry of man and machine. And Dino Cazares, his guitar playing throughout the album is outstanding. He just shreds from beginning to end. Now, what's interesting about this album, coming out in 1995, they were, to me, the forefathers of metalcore. And to some degree, there's elements of melodic death metal in this album. Definitely a lot more metalcore than melodic death metal, but there are hints about it. So my standout tracks, the story is basically man versus machine. It tells the tales about all these machines and it's fight against mankind. So the standout songs, exactly. The standout songs for me are songs that they still to this day play. They're not really around anymore, but up until the last time they played, they were still playing these songs live. Replica, Demanufacture, and Self-Bias Resistor. I mean, those songs were in their set in their last year that they were played together. So it's a testament to how good this album was at the time, and it remained.
Yeah.
So that was my number 3. So we already know what my number 2 is. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Opeth, Still Life.
Okay, cool.
I love that album. I remember picking it up, and back to album covers, it was such a cool set. It had a sleeve over the CD because I bought the CD version. You could go through it, and it had all the trimmings of your typical album it was a very full manual. Mm-hmm. That had all the liner notes and everything in it. So I liked it a lot. But what was cool about it is it tells the story of a man that's exiled from his village for his beliefs, but returns a few years later to find that his lover Melinda has taken up with a new man. He goes into a blind rage and ends up killing her. In his state of mind, he ends up, going after a few other villagers, mostly due to the fact that he was exiled. His life has fallen apart at this point. And he ends up being caught and then hanged due to his crimes. But what more importantly, than just that basic crime is it's kind of a sad tale, because this guy is exiled just because he's a free thinker.
Yeah.
And
it's a famous type of story.
Yeah, and so it's a sad story, but what's really amazing about the album is it can go from just a beautiful section of just this soft music but beautifully written, all the way to just almost dangerous sounding heavy music. Mm-hmm. I mean, Opeth, Michael Ackerfeld, has just such a deep growl, and he doesn't do that anymore because he's moved to a different direction in music. But when he was doing the growl, man, oh my god! One thing that I really love, or one song that I really love on the album, is White Cluster. It's the final song on the album, and it tells the resolution of the whole story. It's about 10 minutes long, but it doesn't feel 10 minutes long.
Oh, that's good. Those are the best kinds of long songs. Mm-hmm. So, cool.
So for my number 1, I've got Inflamed Oracle.
Oh, okay, cool.
It may not necessarily be the best one out there, but it's my favorite.
See, that's what matters. That's what it's your big 4.
Yeah. So it tells the story of the fall of society. A technologically advanced society, not unlike our own,
right,
after an apocalyptic event. So basically, each song kind of follows a story from beginning to end, where the first song, Jotun, is a bit of foreshadowing of what's to come. It tells, basically in the form of a dream, tells this story of things being destroyed. Mm-hmm. And then it has a couple songs, Food for the God, Gyroscope, and there's an instrumental called Dialogue with the Stars, which all have a very hopeful tone. It's basically the advancing of society. Then you reach the Hive, Gesture Script Transfigured, and that's kind of a utopian, complacent society. That everything's just smooth and they're not advancing anymore. It is what it is. And then you've got Morphing into Primal and the Worlds Within Margin, and that's where you see kind of things turning around. Human nature is just what it is, and it's a bit destructive. And you've got these people that have reached complacency that are now filming horrible things on TV, just becoming the society we all know we've kind of become now.
Right.
And then you reach the cataclysm of episode 666, which is not the last song, but the last song of the story, which tells the actual end of society. So then after that, they follow it with a really cool cover of a Depeche Mode song, which is Everything Counts.
Cool.
And it's kind of poignant in that it's saying everything that we do matters. Every decision we make becomes the end result of something.
Right.
And so if you avoid going down this path, you can avoid going down this path by thinking about your actions. And then there's one more instrumental which kind of just carries the song out, which is Oracle. But It's such a good album. It's the last of the what I would say, not necessarily the original lineup of In Flames, but the first substantial lineup of In Flames. Okay. Two of the members left after this album, and the drummer became the lead, or not the lead guitarist, but the rhythm guitarist. So they shuffled things around, which led to some really great things for the next two albums afterwards, but it was definitely the end of an era.
Yeah, that's cool. That the shuffling around of players is kind of weird. It's sort of like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Stefan Kaufmann for Accept. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, he was one of the original drummer, and later went to play guitar for Udo. So it's strange. Like,
yeah, it happens sometimes. But if you really look, like a lot of bands, when you look at their liner notes and the who worked on what, mm-hmm. on it's interesting. And as much, like, I've been researching Kiss lately, you see a lot of times it wasn't necessarily Gene Simmons playing bass on the songs.
Right.
You had Paul Stanley playing multiple parts, the lead and the rhythm guitar. You had Ace playing the bass. Yes. You had a lot of things like that. So you have these musicians that are multi-talented. Eric Carr, I think, played guitar on a few items in their band. So, like, it just shows how talented some of these guys are when they're able to just step over from one instrument to another.
Yeah, except Peter. Couldn't play anything but drums.
I didn't mean them specifically. I just meant just musicians that can do that.
I know. Yeah. All right, so we already went over my 4-3-2. You know, we had Wasp and Fear Factory, and then King Diamond was my number 2. So my number 1 was, or is, Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime.
I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But
I'm a huge Queensryche fan. I don't consider this to be their best album, but it is definitely, to me, a top-notch concept album. Probably one of the most popular concept albums out there by a hard rock band or metal band.
Excuse me.
Operation Mindcrime came out in 1988. It is the story of Dr. X, Mary, and Nikki. It's a story of drugs, manipulation, corruption, all that happy stuff. It weaves a tale about Nikki and Mary. Mary being a woman who was a little bit loose with herself, became a nun. She fell in love with Nikki. They wanted to be together, but, you know, there was a lot of things in the way between the church and Dr. X and all sorts of stuff. So we get to the end of the story, and we really don't know what happened with Mary to some degree. I mean, if you follow the story from beginning to end, you know exactly what happened to Mary. So if you haven't heard it, go out there and listen to it. Queensryche, the band, has played the album in its entirety throughout its career. The Empire Tour, they actually played the entire Operation Mindcrime album in its entirety. They have done so a couple times. They've gone back and they've played some shows where it was in celebration of Mindcrime. And Jeff Tate, in his split with Queensryche, was given the rights to play the album in its entirety.
Even named their band.
And then he named his band that, but that has gone kind of by the wayside since then. But he's allowed to play Operation Mindcrime 1 and 2 in their entirety, which to me that's kind of like no victory, because anybody can play anything. Mm-hmm. But I think the band itself cannot play, which I think they could if they wanted to, because they just have to pay him. But whatever it is, I don't think they really want to. Yeah. But the album it's a great album. I mean, to me, the standout tracks are The Needle Lies, Eyes of a Stranger, and then my favorite song on the album is I Don't Believe in Love. They still play. I believe they closed the show that we went to see with Eyes of the Stranger.
I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, but I think that was their closer. So, I mean, the song, slow song, or slower song, but it's still an excellent song, excellent album. That's my number 1, Queensryche, Operation Mindcrime.
All right, well, that's it for our Big Four this week, and that means that's it for Debating Metal. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, or wherever you consume your podcasts. If you enjoyed our show and agreed with our opinions, or just want to rip us a new one, check us out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or you can email us at debatingmetal@gmail.com. On behalf of Kenneth Dean, I'm Chris Kaye. We'll see you next week.
Bye.